because the delivery of the NPC Standing Committee's work report by top legislator Zhang Dejiang is going to start very soon, and the Chinese top leaders of the Politburo Standing Committee are now entering the site in a great hall of people. And in a short moment, Chinese top legislator Zhang Dejiang is going to deliver a work report of the NPC Standing Committee outlining its achievements and plans. You're watching CCTV News special coverage of the second plenary meeting of 2016 NPC session. During the annual NPC session, the legislative body reports the work they have done since the previous year. And the phrase rule of law has frequently appeared in the work reports in recent years, and that goes in line with the body's focus on completing Chinese laws as well as enhancing law enforcement. And Chinese top legislator Zhang Dejiang is going to deliver the work report of the past year of the NPC Standing Committee.
Dear deputies, for today's meeting, we have 2,943 people in book, with 2,865 people in presence, with 87 people absent. The number of people present is aligned with the law. Now we start the meeting. For today's meeting, we have two major jobs on our agenda. Let's first with our first mission. Let's welcome Zhang Dejiang, Chairman of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, to deliver the report on the work of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress. Fellow deputies, on behalf of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, I now present to you this report on the work of the Standing Committee for your deliberation. Major initiatives of the past year. In the past year, under the firm leadership of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China, headed by General Secretary Xi Jinping, the NPC Standing Committee comprehensively implemented the guiding principles of the 18th National Party Congress and the 3rd, 4th, and 5th plenary session of the 18th CPC Central Committee, follow the guidance of Deng Xiaoping's theory, the theory of three represents, and the scientific outlook on development, and fully grasped and put into practice the guiding principles from General Secretary Xi Jinping's major policy addresses. Remaining committed to integrating leadership by the party, the position of the people as masters of the country and the law-based governance of the country, and acting in accordance with the four-pronged comprehensive strategy, we maintained a tight focus on the overall work of the party and country as we performed our functions and powers and carried out our work. Over the past year, the Standing Committee enacted 5 laws, revised 37 laws, and 1 decision on legal issues. Resolved to present the draft of the charity law, the first law, to this session of the NPC for deliberation and approval, and passed 8 decisions on legal issues. We inspect compliance with 6 laws, heard and deliberated 17 work reports from the State Council, the Supreme People's Court, and the Supreme People's Procuratorate conducted 3 inquiries and 3 research projects and passed 2 resolutions. We deliberated and approved 8 reports from the NPC Special Committee regarding their examination of deputies' proposal, as well as 6 reports from the Credentials Committee pertaining to its review of certain deputies' qualification. We ratified 11 treaties and agreements with foreign countries or international conventions that China had concluded and made decisions on or approved appointments or removal of a number of officials of state bodies. Making progress and achievements in all aspects of our work, we have accomplished all the tasks set forth at the 3rd session of the 12th NPC in 2015. Leadership by the party is the essential feature of socialism with Chinese characteristics, as well as its greatest strength. We have incorporated the leadership of the party into every process and aspect of the NPC's work, upheld the centralized unified leadership of the CPC Central Committee, and ensure that our thinking, actions, and policies all maintain a high degree of unity with the Central Committee headed by General Secretary Xi Jinping. In according the NPC's initiatives and activities concerning legislation, oversight, decision-making, personnel appointments and dismissal, deputies, foreign relations, information and publicity, theoretical research and contact with and guidance over local people's congresses. We have maintained the right political direction and worked to ensure that the party's line principle policies, decisions, and plans are fully and effectively implemented in the work of the state, and that the party can exercise leadership over the state and society through the organs of political power. Number 1, we made new strides in key areas of legislation. The law is of great value in the governance of a country, and good laws are a prerequisite for good governance. Focusing on the key task of raising the quality of legislation, we channeled great effort into advancing legislation in key areas. Large in number, considerable in weight, and rapid in pace, our initiatives in legislation led to a number of important achievements that have supported and promoted the country's reform and development and ensure its stability. First, legislation on national security was enhanced. The national security law represents a comprehensive, overarching, and fundamental law in the field of national security, playing a central role in the establishment of a system of national security laws. Acting in line with the Party Central Committee's overall plan for accelerating the development of rule of law in China's national security efforts, the Standing Committee gave high priority to the enactment of a national security law, which was passed after 3 deliberations. As an important piece of legislation, the national security law embodies an integrative approach to national security and defines national security in the context of China's conditions and realities. It sets out impressive provisions regarding the guiding notions, leadership systems, basic principles, major tasks, and safeguard measures of China's security initiatives, thus laying a solid legal fundamental foundations for accelerating the establishment of a national security system and taking a distinctly Chinese approach to national security. The fight against terrorism has an important bearing on China's national security, on the people's immediate interests, and on the country's reform, development, and stability. In the face of a grave sensitive and complex situation in the fight against terrorism, both at home and abroad, it's of crucial importance that China intensifies its anti-terrorism initiatives. With this in mind, the Standing Committee adopted the anti-terrorism law in December 2015, through which we have defined the basic principles of China's anti-terrorism initiative, improved the working system and mechanisms in this regard, and stepped up anti-terrorism efforts with regard to preventive safety measures, emergency response, international cooperation, and supporting measures. Meanwhile, Amendment 9 to the criminal law passed by the Standing Committee imposed criminal sections against the 5 types of terrorism-related activities and introduced harsher punishments for crime involving terrorism and extremism. These improvements to our counter-terrorism law will be of great importance for preventing and punishing terrorist activities according to law, for safeguarding national and public security, and for protecting people's lives and property. Second, the legislation pertaining to people's well-being was pushed forward. In response to strong public complaints about serious air pollution, such as the frequent occurrence of smog, the Standing Committee worked energetically to revise and improve relevant laws while continuing to strengthen oversight. In particular, we made comprehensive revisions to the air pollution prevention and control law in an effort to make the law significantly more targeted, practically, and enforceable. Increased the number of articles from 66 to 129. We made significant modifications and improvements to the law with a view to strengthening the obligations of the government, enterprises, and individual members of society in the prevention and control of air pollution by upgrading prevention and control standards, tightening total emission control, and improving the emissions permit system. And the revised law enhanced the prevention and control of pollution from coal-burning industry, vehicle, and vehicle exhaust emissions. Wind-borne dust and agriculture. It also refined system for coordinating intra-regional prevention and control efforts in key regions. The people will not be content until they have confidence in the safety of the food they are eating. In a bid to establish the strictest possible oversight and the supervision system for food safety, one that covers the whole process from production to consumption. The Standing Committee took prompt steps to revise the food safety law, taking particular aim at prominent food safety problems. With an emphasis on preventing and reducing safety risks, the revised law has improved basic system pertaining to safety standards and the monitoring and assessment of safety risks. It brings the whole process from food production and distribution to catering under supervision and tightens legal penalties for the unlawful production and the sale of food and for neglect and the deregulation of food safety supervision duties. Opposition to domestic violence is an important indicator of social progress and an essential requirement for harmonious families and a stable society. In September 2015, at the Global Leaders Meeting on Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment, President Xi Jinping stated, "We still strive to eliminate all forms of violence against women, including domestic abuse." The anti-domestic violence law formulated by the Standing Committee emphasizes that the prevention of domestic violence is the shared responsibility of the state, society, and each family. The law has not only stipulated mechanisms and measures for preventing and dealing with domestic abuse, but has also introduced a system of restraining orders to protect the victims of family violence, thereby providing a stronger legal guarantee for preventing domestic violence against women, minors, and other groups, and preserving equal, harmonious, and admirable family relations. We also made timely changes to the population and the family planning law in order to put into effect the decision made at the 5th plenary session of the 18th CPC Central Committee to comprehensively implement a policy of allowing all couples to have 2 children. The Standing Committee issued a decision on revising the population and family planning law, implementing a universal 2-child policy as of January 1st, 2016. The revised law stipulates that all couples are allowed to have 2 children. Those couples who had observed the previous 1-child policy and are still willing to have another 1 child in their lifetime should be eligible for a certificate of honor, which entitles them to benefits and assistance as stipulated. As the response to the major demographic shift that has taken place in China, the revision of the population and family planning law represents a major change to China's birth policy and is a move that will have far-reaching effects on our efforts to promote the balanced development of China's population. Third, the criminal law system was improved. With a view to implementing the guidelines on deepening judicial reform issued by CPC Central Committee, and in an effort to adapt to the new circumstances and requirements pertaining to criminal justice, the Standing Committee deliberated and passed the 52-article Amendment 9 to the criminal law, making considerable revisions and improvements to the law. The revision mainly involved abolishing capital punishment for 9 crimes that rarely saw the sentence applied, improving legal punishment for 9 criminal laws that rarely saw the sentence applied, improving legal regulation for punishing embezzlement and bribery, which paragraphic stipulating the applicable of life imprisonment and the inapplicability of communication or parole for a specific circumstance, imposing heavier punishment on cybercrime, strengthening protection of the rights of a person for women, children, and the elderly, making it a crime to disrupt counter-room order organize cheating in examinations, organize or found illegal, assembled, or fabricate, or purposely disseminate false information, and repealing the crime of having paid sex with the girl under the age of 14. Fourth, legislative work in other areas was coordinated. The legislative power represents one of the most important functions and powers of the NPC. Following its submission of the draft revision of the legislation law to the 3rd session of the 12th NPC for deliberation in 2015, this year the Standing Committee has submitted the draft of the charity law to this session for deliberation on the basis of thorough preparations. The drafting of the law was overseen by the Internal and Judicial Affairs Committee. The Standing Committee has deliberated the draft twice, solicited comments from the public on 2 separate occasions, and made careful revisions accordingly before submitting to this session for deliberation. In addition, the Standing Committee formulated the law on the exploration and development of deep-sea floor resources, revised the advertisement law, the seed law, the law on promoting the application of scientific and technology advance, the education law, and the higher education law, and deliberated draft legislation including a law on the management of international NGOs in China, a cybersecurity law, a revision of the securities laws, an asset evaluation law, amendment to the law on the promotion of privately run schools, a revision of the wildlife protection law, a film industry promotion law, and a law on traditional Chinese medicine. Attaching high priority to and acting in line with the concept of effect and the democratic legislation. The Standing Committee engaged in vigorous efforts to refine legislative mechanisms and systems with a view to making our legislative work more systematic, timely, targeted, and effectively. First, with the approval of the CPC Central Committee, the adjustments were made to the 5-year legislative plan of the current Standing Committee, principally to include into the plan legislative items pertaining to the coordinated implementation of the 4 prolonged comprehensive stage. Second, we intensified the research and evaluation of legislative items and carry out dedicated deliberations on key points and difficulties in the drafts of the National Security Law and the Anti-Terrorism Law, as well as in the draft revisions of the Air Pollution Prevention Control Law and the Advertising Law. Third, giving full play to the role of NPC deputies, we improve mechanisms for soliciting their opinions on draft laws and invited them to participate in the debate, research, and deliberation process. Fourth, in a bid to broaden channels for the systematic participation of citizens in the legislative process, we formulated the procedures for releasing drafts of law for public comment, according to which the draft of law for the first and second deliberations of the Standing Committee should both be promptly made available to the public after the draft of the anti-domestic violence law was released. For example, we received more than 40,000 comments. Fifth, we actively responded to the concerns of NPC deputies, members of the National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conferences, and the people from all sectors of society, studying and incorporating, where possible, the comments and suggestions of all sides into the relevant laws. Sixth, we established a system of staying connected with local communities on legislative issues.
Second, we strengthen efforts to ensure and oversee the enforcement of the Constitution. Ensuring the full enhancement of the Constitution represents the most important and fundamental task in building China into a socialist rule of law country. With a continued commitment to upholding the principles of the Constitution, the Standing Committee has fulfilled its duty to oversee the enforcement of it and energetically promote the spirit of the Constitution, resolutely safeguard its authority, and ensure its full enforcement. First, we introduced a system of pledging allegiance to the Constitution. The Standing Committee examined the decision of the Standing Committee of the NPCs on implementing the system of pledging allegiance to the Constitution, thereby establishing our system into national law. It stipulates all those who are elected or appointed to public office by People's Congresses at all levels or by the Standing Committees of People's Congresses at and above the county level, as well as by People's Governments, People's Courts, and People's Procuratoriats at all levels, shall make a public pledge of allegiance to the Constitution when they officially assume office. This is a major measure for promoting governance of the country based on the Constitution and other laws. The words of the pledge embody the sense of loyalty, responsibility, and commitment that public servants are expected to have toward their country and people. The practice of such allegiance to the Constitution will play an important role in urging public servants to remain loyal to, comply with, and safeguard the Constitution, which will help us in our efforts to ensure its enforcement. Second, we exercised constitutional stipulations on amnesty. In commemorating the 70th anniversary of the victory in the Chinese War of Resistance against Japanese aggression and in global war against fascism, And acting in line with the decisions of CPC Central Committee, this NPC, in compliance with the relevant provisions of the Constitution, adopted a decision on granting amnesty to certain prisoners. The President issued an order granting amnesty to prisoners falling into 4 categories, with one category being those who fought in the War of Resistance and those who fought in the War of Liberation. This marks the 8th time since the founding of PRC and the first time since the introduction of reform and opening up that amnesty has been granted in China. The granting of amnesty represents a new step that has been taken to implement the system of amnesty as stipulated in the Constitution, and apply the spirit of humanitarianism, and therefore has major political and legal implications. Second, we enacted the law on national medals and titles of honor. The system of national awards and honors is an important system stipulated in the Constitution in order to commend those who have made outstanding contributions, foster and promote the core socialist values, and enhance the cohesiveness and appeal of socialism with Chinese characteristics. The Standing Committee, in accordance with paragraph 16 under Article 67 of the Constitution, and on the basis of a review of the past experience in granting medals and awards, drafted and then deliberated and passed the law on national medals and titles of honor. This law has defined the most important and fundamental provisions concerning national medals and honorary titles, such as the establishment of such medals and titles, eligible recipients, and awarding procedures, thereby laying down an important legal basis for establishing and improving relevant systems of party and state awards and honors. Fourth, we improved the recording and review system for normative documents. The recording and review of normative documents constitutes an important system for safeguarding the authority of the Constitution and ensuring legislative consistency. Seizing on the opportunity provided by the implementation of the revised legislation law, the Standing Committee took steps not only to improve the system of recording and reviewing normative documents, but also to enhance its capacity to implement this system. The working bodies, working in collaboration with relevant departments, established a mechanism for coordinating the recording and review of regulations. Thanks to years of efforts, all types of regulations, rules, judicial interpretations, and other normative documents have been brought under the scope of recording and review. And through the recording and review, we have worked to see to it that any normative document that is found to through conflict with the Constitution or any other law is rescinded or corrected in accordance with the law and relevant regulations. Over the past year, the working bodies of the Standing Committee reviewed over 30 administrative regulations and judicial interpretations submitted by the State Council, the Supreme People's Court, and the Supreme People's Procuratorate. They have also taken the initiative to review certain local regulations, studying over 200 suggestions from various departments. In doing so, we have ensured proper recording and review. Third, we supported and promoted the comprehensive deepening of reform in accordance with the law. The Standing Committee has remained committed to advancing reform on the basis of the rule of law and strengthening the rule of law through reform. Through our efforts in legislation and oversight, we ensured that all of China's major reforms have a legal basis and are carried out soundly. First, we granted authorization to support trial reforms. For proposed reforms that come into conflict with the existing laws, and for those the conditions for revising the relevant laws do not exist and trials are required first, the Standing Committee may act in accordance with the legal procedures to grant authorization for preliminary reform trials to be conducted, thereby providing the necessary legal basis and support for trial reforms in certain regions. over the past year, we have issued authorization decisions on a series of initiatives, including the trial reform of the system of people's assessors, the trials for filing public interest litigation, the pilot program of a marketing authorization holder system for drugs and the relevant issues, the trials to allow the mortgaging of contracted rural land use rights and farmers' home property rights, and the adjustment to the applicability of certain stipulations in the securities law in order to implement the reform, to introduce an IPO registration system. These decisions have been made with clear definition to the scope, content, and period of validity of the relevant authorizations. Meanwhile, we urged relevant government departments to carry out these reforms according to law, promptly sum up experience gained in practice, and report the progress to the Standing Committee. Second, we carried out a coordinated effort to revise similar or related stipulations across certain laws. In a continued effort to help the government streamline administration, delegate more powers, improve regulation, and provide better services, we found it imperative to act promptly to revise or rescind any laws and regulations that are no longer suited to the current condition. On the basis of thoroughly reviewing relevant motions put forward by the State Council, and in view of different circumstances, we decided to adopt a comprehensive approach to the revision of the laws in question. We adopted 6 decisions on the revision of existing laws, which involved 24 laws and 1 decision on legal issues, making consistent revisions to certain articles therein concerning government review and price regulation. In addition, revisions were made to the law on commercial banks, such as the deletion of a provision stipulating that the loan-to-deposit ratio of commercial banks was not to exceed 75%. This enables commercial banks to increase their credit supply by an appropriate margin and better support the development of the real economy. Third, we heard and reviewed reports on the progress of reforms from the State Council, the Supreme People's Court, and the Supreme People's Procuratorate. Over the last several years, we have made authorization decisions on a number of pilot initiatives in reform and opening up. In April 2015, the Standing Committee heard and reviewed the State Council's work report on pilot free trade zones, giving a positive appraisal of the progress made in the development of the China-Shanghai Pilot Free Trade Zone and in the establishment of 3 more pilot free trade zones in Guangdong, Tianjin, and Fujian. The Standing Committee also proposed several improvements with regard to the active yet prudent development of pilot free trade zones. In August, during its review of the midterm report of the Supreme People's Court and the Supreme People's Procuratorate on the implementation of the pilot projects of accelerated procedures for certain criminal cases, we emphasized the need to enhance the organization, guidance, monitoring, and inspection of the pilot projects and conduct timely reviews and assessments so that a reliable source of reference could be provided for improving criminal litigation procedures. In December, when the authorization allowing the State Council to make provisional adjustments on a trial basis to items requiring government review as prescribed by certain laws in Guangdong Province was about to expire, the Standing Committee reviewed the State Council's report on the implementation of this pilot practice and made a decision regarding the handling of subsequent matters following the expiration. Fourth, we made progress in the provision of more effective oversight. The Standing Committee exercises powers of oversight in accordance with the law, with a view to better serving the central task and the overall interests of the country. We channeled considerable energy into making our oversight work more effective. We have helped to ensure the implementation of our major decisions and plans, as well as law-based government administration. First, we intensified our efforts to inspect compliance with laws. Inspecting compliance with laws is a major statutory means. Over the past year, we inspected compliance with 6 laws, specifically the law on vocational education, the law on protection of consumers' rights and interests, the agricultural law, the law on prevention and control of water pollution, the law on guaranteeing rights and interests of senior citizens, and on regional ethnic autonomy. Vice chairpersons of the Standing Committee, as well as myself as chairman, headed inspection groups to localities to oversee and inspect compliance with these laws. And on this basis, delivered reports on the findings at the meetings of the Standing Committee and chaired inquiries on related specific issues. In addition, we strengthened follow-up oversight. Following the inspection, we deliberated on the inspection report in 2014. We made arrangements last year to hear and deliberate the State Council's feedback report on how it had responded to our 2014 report and our comments. We also heard and deliberated a report from the State Council on the work it did in response to our compliance inspection report for the law on vocational education and our comments. Our efforts in this regard have contributed to improving relevant government work. Focusing on the prominent problems and weak points identified in the enforcement of laws for which we carried out compliance inspections, we put forward comments and proposals. We urge relevant government departments to work toward complete and effective enforcement of these laws. Taking these comments and suggestions extremely seriously, the State Council and its departments took earnest measures to rectify the problems exposed in the inspection reports and implement Standing Committee's suggestions, thereby resolving a number of practical problems and refining the relevant systems and mechanisms. Based on an inspection of compliance with the law on vocational education, we put forward proposals on improving the quality of vocational education by taking an employment-oriented approach, deepening integration of vocational education with industry and cooperation between vocational colleges and businesses to shift their focus towards providing applied education. Under follow-up monitoring by the NPC's Education, Science, Culture and Public Health Committee, the relevant government departments acted accordingly by revising the list of specialties offered by vocational colleges and promulgating methods for managing the provision of specialties by vocational colleges. As a result, the total number of specialties condensed from 1,170 to 748. In addition, we formulated guidelines on encouraging the incorporation of vocational education providers into groups, resulting in the formation of over 1,000 vocational education groups. They also implemented the action plan for innovation and development in higher vocational education and the guidelines on encouraging some local regular undergraduate institutions to shift toward providing applied education.
Second, we strengthened the review and oversight of government budgets and final accounts. In performing this legally prescribed duty, the Standing Committee heard and deliberated government reports on final accounts, auditing work, and the implementation of budgets, and reviewed and approved the central government's final accounts for 2014. We required governments at all levels and related departments to conscientiously observe the revised budget law, deepen the reform of fiscal and tax systems, follow standard procedures in compiling and managing budgets and final accounts, and make an overall plan for the use of government funds so as to ensure that these funds are used more effectively. We deliberated and approved a motion by the State Council on imposing ceilings on local government debt in 2015 and heard and deliberated a report on its work to strengthen local government debt management. Upon deliberation, we required that the growth of local government debt be tightly controlled, strict procedures be followed in the issuance of bonds by local governments, and strict controls be imposed on the use of borrowed funds with due attention given to both short-term and long-term needs. We also require that the improvements be made to mechanisms for evaluating debt management performance, assessing risks, and dealing with emergencies so as to effectively prevent and diffuse local government debt risk. Third, we help to promote sustained sound economic development. The Standing Committee heard and deliberated reports by the State Council on Development, and including a report on the implementation of the 2014 Plan for National Economic and Social Development. We fully endorse the work of the National Council under its relevant departments. And at the same time, we propose that the State Council continue to faithfully implement the decisions and plans of the Party's Central Committee, understand, adapt to, and guide the new normal in China's economic development, focus on improving the quality and efficacy of economic development, maintain a proper balance between ensuring steady growth, promoting reform, making structural adjustments, improving living standards, and guarding against risk. And we also heard and deliberated reports by the State Council on its work to promote the application of information technology and the deeper integration of information technology into industrialization, and on its work to improve and stabilize rural-aligned contract relations. We emphasize that the government should highlight information technology development as a strategy, promote breakthroughs in key technologies, and build a system for innovation. We require that the government should work to ensure smooth progress in terming, registering, and certifying contracted rural land use rights, properly settle disputes over contracted land use rights, and solve the problems of an increasing number of rural residents having no land to farm, protect the rights and interests of farmers according to law, carry out the trial reform of the rural land system in an orderly fashion. The Standing Committee organized for the relevant special committees and working committees to carry out dedicated research on major issues concerning economic and social development during the 13th five-year plan period. The 24 reports these led to focused on issues concerning public finance, the economy, education, science, culture, political health, public health, energy conservation, environmental protection, and all of these a great contribution and a reference for formulating the 13th five-year plan. Fourth, we help to guarantee and improve living standards. Safeguarding and improving the people's well-being and promoting social equity and justice represents priorities in the Standing Committee's oversight work. After hearing and deliberating the State Council's report on its efforts to develop the system of public cultural services, the Standing Committee proposed that the relevant government departments intensify the construction of public cultural and sports facilities, build a stronger contingent of personnel in the cultural and sports sectors, increase the supply of public cultural products and services. After hearing and deliberating the State Council report on the progress in deepening the reform of the medical and healthcare system, the Standing Committee fully affirmed the notable achievements that had been registered, while also emphasizing that the government should continue to push the reform forward in line with China's reality, with strong confidence and the courage to overcome any difficulty that may emerge on the road ahead. The government should do everything it can within reasonable limits to ensure basic medical and healthcare services for the people. We also need to find the way out for the Chinese people in terms of medical and healthcare services. Fifth, we continue to strengthen oversight of judicial work. we heard and deliberated the report of Supreme People's Court on the hearing of administrative cases and the report of Supreme People's Procurate on the oversight over the enforcement of final decisions. On this basis, we commented that the court should fully observe the revised administrative procedure law and improve the hearing of administration cases, and that the procurate rates should standardize and improve oversight over the enforcement of final decisions and ensure strict application of sentence communication. People's Court also held a teleconference for courts throughout the country, during which it laid out dedicated plans for strengthening and improving the hearing of administrative cases under new circumstances. The Supreme People's Procuratorate also earnestly considered our comments. The Standing Committee identified improving oversight mechanisms and methods as an important means of intensifying its oversight work and making its oversight more effective, and conducted new trials in this regard. This led, among other things, to the production of the guideline on establishing a mechanism for the State Council to report to the NPC Standing Committee on the rectification of pronounced problems. In June 2015, the Standing Committee heard and deliberated the State Council's annual report on auditing work and proposed corrections to problems identified therein. In December, the Standing Committee convened to hear and deliberate the State Council's report on the rectification of these problems, and then conducted an inquiry on specific issues based on our deliberation. This was a first in the oversight work of the NPC. Judging from the results, all problems discovered in auditing have been rectified, with the Ministry of Finance and the rest of 6 departments rectifying the major problems and representing reports on their rectification work, and 47 departments and offices making corrections to 772 other problems. In addition, the National Audit Office referred leads on violations of the law and the disciplines uncovered during the auditing to the competent authorities for further investigation. And we carry out special inquiries in connection with our deliberations of the 2 compliance inspection reports for the law on violation education and the law on the prevention and control of water pollution. And the leading officials from the State Council came to deliver report on special topic at meetings of the Standing Committee and attended joint group meetings of the Standing Committee as well as meetings of the Standing Committee's groups, inspecting compliance with laws to respond to inquiries and solicit comments. Fifth, we facilitated improvements in the work of local people's congresses. The work of local people's congresses is vital to the effective performance of People's Congress under new circumstances. With the view to upholding and improving the system of People's Congresses and forming synergy in the work of People's Congresses so as to deliver more effective performance, the Standing Committee lays stress on developing closer work relations with local People's Congresses, enhanced the guidance and support for their work, expanded the scope of cooperation and exchanges with them, and worked with them to ensure that the system of People's Congresses and its performance can keep up, improve, and develop with the times. First, we work steps to strengthen the work and development of People's Congress at the county and township levels. As the community-level bodies of state power in China and an important foundation of the local political power, People's Congresses at the county and the township levels assume a fundamental position in the modernization of our country. In June 2015, the CPC Central Committee forwarded the guidelines of the leading party members group of of the NPC Standing Committee on strengthening the work and development of People's Congress at the county and the township level. These represented a major measure taken by the Party Central Committee under new conditions to strengthen the work of People's Congress, especially those at the county and township levels. In response to the guidelines, the Standing Committee promptly revised the organic law of the local people's congresses and the local people's governments, the electoral law for the National People's Congress and the local people's congresses, and the law on deputies to the National People's Congresses, with the focus on revising and improving provisions concerning organizational and working system. In September 2015, the General Office of the Standing Committee held a conference on strengthening the work and development of People's Congresses at the county and township levels, urging local People's Congresses at all levels to study and implement the guidelines of the Party Central Committees, as well as the revised legal provision. Local People's Congresses, in view of their own circumstances, took prompt measures to improve the relevant regulations and working rules and ensure implementation of all tasks and requirements. Second, we drew on the revised legislation law to improve local legislative work. The newly revised legislation law accords local legislative powers to all cities, which have subsidiary districts, and thus set out new requirements on strengthening legislative work and improving the quality of legislation. This represented an important measure to improve the local legislation system and the work of local People's Congress. In order to ensure full implementation of the revised legislation law, the Legislative Affairs Commission of the Standing Committee held a national symposium on local legislation with the participation of leading members from 31 provinces, autonomous regions, and other places under the central government, as well as of more than 80 cities which have been granted local legislative power. The participants engaged in focused discussions and exchanged views with regarding to performing the dominant role of People's Congress. By strengthening fact-finding investigations and reviewing past experience, we also provided active assistance to the standing committees of People's Congresses of provinces and autonomous regions, helping them to establish procedure, process, and timetables for the cities. And we held 3 training sessions on the revised legislation law for 873 legislators from provinces and all other places, as well as 178 autonomous prefectures and cities divided into districts, thereby supporting the efforts. Third, we conducted research in preparation for the election of new People's Congresses at the county and township level. Beginning in 2016, elections will be held for new People's Congresses at the county and township levels across the country, during which more than 900 million voters are expected to directly elect over 2.5 million deputies. This will be a major political event in China and an important step in the development of socialist democracy. Bearing this in mind, we established a research task force which, based on a review of past experience and opinions from a wide range of sources and analysis of new development and problems in elections, and has prepared a guiding document for the elections. Fourth, we strengthen the ties with local People's Congresses. We continue to invite leading members of the standing committees of provincial level People's Congresses to observe meetings of the standing committee, had briefings at regular intervals to keep local Congresses updated on the work of the standing committee. and improved mechanisms through which we solicit legislation opinions. When carrying out inspections of compliance with laws, the Standing Committee requests the assistance of the People Congresses of the relevant provinces and other places. The special committees of the NPC and the working bodies of the Standing Committee strengthened their contacts and coordination with the relevant bodies of local People's Congress. The Standing Committee actively promoted the application of information technology in local People's Congresses. Over the past 3 years, we have provided training for the chairperson or vice chairpersons of the Standing Committee of more than 2,850 county-level People's Congresses across the country. Local People's Congresses provide full support for the work of the Standing Committee, doing a great deal to assist us in the compliance with laws.
6. We deepened and expanded work related to deputies to NPC. The Standing Committee has continued to respect the principal position of the deputies, believing that exerting their role is vital to strengthening our contact with the public and raising the quality of our work. We improved our work mechanisms related to deputies in a constant effort to raise the standard of our deputy-related work. First, we strengthened our ties with the NPC deputies. We implemented the system whereby members of the Chairperson's Council and members of the Standing Committee maintain direct contact with NPC deputies and hear deputies' comments and suggestions on the work of the Standing Committee in a variety of ways. We invited more deputies to observe meetings of the Standing Committee and increased their participation in the Standing Committee's legislation, oversight, and research activities. Last year, more than 370 deputies observed meetings of the Standing Committee. Over 300 participated in the Standing Committee's inspections of compliance with laws, and more than 600 took part in fact-finding investigations organized by the Supreme People's Court and the Supreme People's Procuratorate. Second, we carefully examined deputies' proposals and handled their suggestions. Last year, the relevant special committees completed their examination of all 521 proposals referred to them by the Presidium of the third session of the 12th NPC. Among them, the committee has, after deliberations, adopted 17 legislative items and launched 5 law compliance inspection tasks cited in 91 of the proposals, and is currently deliberating 8 legislative items cited in 22 proposals and has included 49 legislative items discussed in 159 proposals into the legislative plan. During the examination process, the special committees made earnest efforts to study and adopt the opinions of deputies and promptly prepared reports on the outcome. The deputies raised 8,239 suggestions, criticisms, and comments during last year's session of the NPC, and they have been handled, and the feedback has been given to deputies by the departments handling them. The State Council, the Supreme People's Court, and Procuratorate, as well as relevant government departments, attached a great significance to the handling of their suggestions. The State Council convened meetings exclusively to hear its department's reports on the handling of their suggestions and set out clear requirements. The departments charged with the handling strengthened their direct communication with deputies concerned and made dedicated efforts to improve the relevant aspects of their work. According to the data, 80% of the problems raised by deputies last year have been resolved. or slated for gradual resolution. We grouped and condensed 185 suggestions jointly proposed by 2,638 deputies belonging to 13 delegations, ending up with 20 key suggestions to be addressed under our supervision. And we referred these suggestions to 43 departments for implementation under the oversight of 7 special committees of the NPC. Thanks to the efforts of all sides, notable progress has been made. In response to suggestions on, among other things, promoting the development of the Yangtze Economic Belt and turning China into a manufacturer of quality, the relevant departments formulated and introduced a number of plans, policies, and measures which have proven highly effective in advancing the relevant initiatives. Third, we supported and ensured deputies' law-based performance of their duties. We organized more than 1,700 deputies to participate in dedicated research activities. This not only prepared them for attending this session of the NPC and performing their duties, but also helped them to enter communities, interact with the general public, and have a better understanding of social conditions. We organized 4 study sessions and seminars on special topics for deputies, as well as 1 study session for ethnic minority deputies. The principal leaders of the Supreme People's Court, Procuratorate, the Ministry of Supervision, the Ministry of Finance delivered specialized reports, following which more than 1,100 attending deputies discussed and exchanged views on the topics. 7. We actively carried out foreign relations work. In accordance with the overall arrangements of the party and state-owned diplomatic work, we actively engaged in exchanges and cooperation with foreign parliaments and multilateral parliamentary organizations. First, we consolidated and expanded the NPC's mechanism-based exchanges with foreign parliaments. The NPC, the Russian Federation Council, the State Duma of Russia jointly established the new China-Russia Parliamentary Cooperation Committee and held its first meeting. It was co-chaired by the leaders of the legislative bodies of the 2 countries. It helped to maintain a high level of parliamentary cooperation between China and Russia. We arranged for a high-level delegation of the U.S. House of Representatives to visit China, which included the first-ever visit to Tibet. We held 2 meetings with the European Parliament under the mechanism of regular exchanges and resumed our parliamentary exchanges with Japan, which had been suspended for years. We officially implemented the mechanism of regular exchanges with the state great hero of Mongolia and established mechanisms for political dialogue with Peruvian and Argentine congresses. We strengthened diplomacy with the parliaments of other major countries of the world to enhance mutual trust and have beneficial cooperation. Second, we steadily promoted multilateral diplomatic activities among parliaments. The year 2015 marked the 70th anniversary of the end of the global war against fascism and the founding of the UN. As chairman of the Standing Committee of NPC, I led a delegation to the 4th World Conference of Speakers of Parliament at the United Nations headquarters in New York. I proposed that peace and development should be made a theme of the meeting and that eradicating poverty and promoting economic and social development should be made core objectives of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. I attended the first BRICS Parliamentary Forum in Russia, which further enriched cooperation among BRICS countries and enhanced our mutual trust and cohesion. We actively participated in the activities of multilateral organizations such as the Interparliamentary Union, the Asia-Pacific Parliamentary Forum, the Asian Parliamentary Assembly. During these activities, we projected China's voice and expanded the international influence of developing countries and safeguarded their common interests. Third, we conducted friendly international exchanges at all levels. We actively engaged in high-level exchanges with the parliaments of Russia, the Republic of Korea, India, France, and Hungary, and received 49 parliamentary or other delegations from countries including Pakistan, Italy, South Africa, Bangladesh, and Vietnam. We gave play to the role of the NPC's Foreign Affairs Committee as a window for international exchanges and encouraged the relevant special committees and working committees to engage in exchanges with their counterparts in foreign parliaments. To deepen pragmatic cooperation and promoting alignment of the Silk Road Economic Belt and 21st Century Maritime Silk Road Initiative with the development strategies of relevant countries, we continued to foster policy and legal environments that are more conducive to cooperation by stepping up policy coordination and providing stronger legal guarantees. We encouraged mutual learning, drawing on the experience of others to our key legislative items. During the exchanges, we safeguarded China's sovereignty, security, and interests. Our numerous occasions, in a variety of ways, have helped us to publicize the path, theory, and system of socialism with Chinese characteristics, informed the world of China's achievements in development, explained the significance of the China Dream, and shared the story of the NPC, thereby winning China more understanding, trust, and support from the international community. 8. We redoubled self-improvement efforts. Attaching primary importance to enhancing theoretical competence and fostering political integrity, we armed ourselves with Deng Xiaoping theory, the theory of three represents, the scientific approach to development, and the guiding principles from General Secretary Xi Jinping's major policy addresses. As a result, we strengthened our confidence in the path, theory, and system of socialism, and fortified our shared ideals and convictions. Following in-depth study of the three stricts and three honests, we become more purposeful in acting in line with them when carrying out our work. In a persistent effort to improve our style of work, we continue to improve our meeting culture and style of writing, and actively carried out investigations and studies. We improved party conduct, upholded integrity, and fought corruption, striving to foster a positive, upright, and clean working atmosphere. We implemented the system of collective study among members of the leading party members group of the Standing Committee and made good use of Standing Committee seminars to raise our capacity to think and act in accordance with the rule of law as we carry out our work. The bodies of the NPC, by earnestly following the requirements of the three stricts and three honests, made comprehensive improvements as to their political integrity, organization, work style, and institution, thereby giving full play to their role as an advisor, assistant, and service provider. The Standing Committee strengthened leadership over the work of special committees while emphasizing the need to maximize their role. The special committees earnestly performed their legally mandated duties and functions in light of the actual conditions and carried out a large number of highly effective initiatives. First, they ensured the implementation of the legislative plan formulated by the Standing Committee. They drafted legislation such as revisions to the seed law, securities law, wildlife protection law, and submitted drafts for deliberation as prescribed by law. They were also involved in the drafting of laws by other state organs at an early stage and produced reports after careful deliberation. In particular, we enhanced its unified deliberation of drafts of legislation, adopted comments and suggestions from all sectors of society, and built up broad consensus on legislation. Second, with a focus on oversight topics selected by the Standing Committee, the special committees organized and conducted inspections of compliance with laws, carried out research on selected topics, and made pragmatic comments and suggestions, and conducted follow-up oversight over the adoption of comments issued by the Standing Committee. The Financial and Economic Affairs Committee, by strengthening analysis of economic performance, did a good job examining the government's 2015 draft plan for national economic and social development, as well as draft budgets and final accounts. Third, they examined deputies' proposals, urged the relevant government departments to redouble their efforts in the handling of deputies' key suggestions, and delivered a sound performance in international exchanges and the deliberation of treaties, thereby making a positive contribution to improving NPC's work. Fellow deputies, the achievements made by the Standing Committee last year came under the correct leadership of the CPC Central Committee headed by General Secretary Xi Jinping. They were the result of the hard work of NPC deputies, members of the NPC Standing Committee and special committees, and the staff of all NPC bodies. The close cooperation of the State Council, the Supreme People's Court, the Supreme People's Procuratorate, and local people's congresses at all levels and their standing committees, as well as the full trust and great support of all of Chinese people. On behalf of the Standing Committee, I would like to express our highest respect for and sincere gratitude to them all. Looking back on our work over the past year, we realize that there are still some deficiencies that have caused us to fall short of the new requirements for advancing the four-pronged comprehensive strategy in a coordinated manner, as well as the new expectations of deputies and the general public. We need to ensure that the NPC better plays its dominant role in the legislative process, devote major efforts to making our oversight more effective, improve and better implement systems, enabling deputies to play their roles and maintain close ties with the people. Address our inadequacies in carrying out research at the community level and responding to the concerns of the public. Strengthen theoretical research on the system of people's congresses and have new progress in the NPC's information and publicity work. Taking this problem seriously, we must listen to comments and suggestions from deputies and all sectors of society, willingly subject ourselves to oversight and consistently improve our work.
And major tasks for this year. The year 2016 represents the first year of our decisive push to finish building a moderately prosperous society in all respects. The overall requirements for the work of the NPC Standing Committee this year is as follows. Hold high the great banner of socialism with Chinese characteristics, comprehensively implement the guiding principles of the 18th National Party Congress and the 3rd, 4th, and 5th plenary sessions of the 18th CPC Central Committee, follow the guidance of Deng Xiaoping's theory, the theory of three represents, and scientific outlook on development, put into practice the guiding principles from General Secretary Xi Jinping's major policy addresses, work in accordance with the overall plan for promoting all-round economic, political, cultural, social, and ecological progress, firmly establish and put into effect the new vision of innovative, coordinated, green, open, and shared development, remain committed to integrating leadership by the party, the position of the people as masters of the country, and the law-based governance of the country, perform our functions and powers in accordance with the law, carry out our work actively and diligently with a focus on legislation and oversight, and make a new contribution to helping China secure a good beginning to economic and social development in the 13th five-year plan period and clinch a momentary victory in its decisive push. Number one, strengthening and improving legislative work under the new circumstance and accelerating the formation of a complete framework of law and regulations. The rule of law constitutes a robust guarantee for development. The fifth plenary session of the 18th CPC Central Committee called for accelerated efforts to bring economic and social development in line with the rule of law. The Standing Committee must fully enforce the revised legislative law and the adjusted legislative plan, focus and work effectively on legislation in key areas, and make revise, repeal, or interpret laws when necessary. We will legislate to promote the implementation of a new vision and of development, making in-depth efforts to legislate effectively and democratically, and pay extra attention so as to ensure that every piece of legislation accords with the guiding principle of Constitution, reflects the will of the people. First, we will improve the legal system underpinning the socialist market economy, focusing on the goal of ensuring the market plays the decisive role and the government better plays its role in resource allocation. We will strengthen the rule of law in economic and social development. And in the operation of the market economy, we will formulate general provisions of civil law in order to improve the basic system of civil law. We will work on a law on environmental protection task, a tonnage tax law, a tobacco leaf tax law, a green law, and an assets valuation law. We will revise the securities law, the law on promoting small and medium-sized enterprises, with a continued commitment to green development and ecological progress. We will revise the law on the prevention and control of water pollution and the law on the protection of the marine environment and the wildlife protection law. Second, we will coordinate legislative work in social and cultural field. In an effort to strengthen and make innovations in social governance, we will work on a law on traditional Chinese medicine and a community correction law, and revise the law on the promotion of private-run schools and the law on the Red Cross Society. To deepen the reform of the cultural sector, we will formulate a law for guaranteeing public cultural services and a law on promoting the film industry. To promote integrated military-civilian development and deepen the reform of national defense and the armed force, we will work on a law on transportation for national defense purpose and revise the law on officers on active services. To push forward anti-corruption legislation, we will formulate a law on international criminal judicial assistance and explore possible revisions to the law on administrative supervision. Third, we will take necessary steps on authorized trial reforms. Acting in line with the decisions and plans of the CPC Central Committee, we will make law-based timely decisions to authorize pilot reform projects so as to ensure that reform move forward in line with the rule of law. We will carefully deliberate the median and of-term reports of authorized pilot projects, conduct in-depth reviews and appraisals of practice developed in the projects and their effects, promote the spread of applicable practice to other areas in accordance with the law, and revise and improve the relevant laws. Fourth, we will ensure that the NPC plays the dominant role in legislative work. Upholding the party's leadership over the work of NPC, the leading party members group of the Standing Committee will promptly request instructions from and submit reports to the CPC Central Committee on major issues and takes in legislation, and will carry out the relevant tasks in accordance with the legally prescribed procedure. We will enhance the NPC role in organizing, coordinating, and providing overall guidance, and further develop the mechanism under which Special Committee of the NPC and work bodies of Standing Committee organize the drafting of important laws. And we will improve the system for legislative debate, hearing, and evaluation, establish a mechanism for debate and consultations on any major adjustments affecting different interests that may result from legislation. Number 2, exercising law-based proper and effective oversight. The oversight by the NPC and its Standing Committee over the work of the State Council, the Supreme People's Court and the Supreme People's Procuratorate, and over compliance with laws is an inherent requirement and institutional design of the system of People's Congress, and a practice that embodies the constitutional principle that all state powers belong to the people. The Standing Committee must effectively exercise the power of oversight granted to it, bearing close reference to the new vision of development, reform measures, and requirement for rule of law introduced by the CPC Central Committee, taking a problem-oriented approach, and also facilitate the efforts of the State Council to carry out administration in accordance with the law and the efforts of the Supreme People's Court and Supreme People's Procurement to administer justice. First, we will strengthen oversight over the enforcement of the Constitution. We will intensify publicity and education on the Constitution, promote the spirit of the Constitution, and organize for government officials elected or appointed by the NPC or its Standing Committee to pledge to the Constitution. We will step up the recording and review of normative documents. And we also take the initiative to review newly formulated administrative regulations and carefully study, handle, and respond to the suggestions from various sectors during reviews so as to uphold the unity of our legal system. Second, we will strengthen oversight over compliance with laws. We will inspect compliance with 6 laws, especially the food safety law, the water law, the law on promoting the application of science and technology advance, the environmental protection law, the road traffic safety law, and the law on workplace safety. We will carry out the dedicated inquiry based on our deliberation of the compliance inspection reports produced for the food safety law, the environmental protection law, and the law on work safety. And we will hear and deliberate the State Council's report on how it has responded to our compliance inspection reports for the law on guaranteeing the rights and interests of senior citizens and the food safety law, as well as our comments. We will hear and deliberate a report from the State Council regarding the enforcement of the law on entry and exit administration and conduct an investigation into the state of enforcement of the law on the prevention and control of water pollution. We will work to ensure that the rule of law permits the whole of society and takes root among the people. We will hear and deliberate the State Council's report on the implementation of the resolution on launching the 6th five-year initiative.
Third, we will strengthen oversight over government budgets and fiscal final accounts. We will carefully hear and deliberate reports from the State Council on the central government's final accounts for 2015, on the auditing of the performance of central government budgets and other revenue and expenditure items, and on the implementation of 2015 government budgets. In line with the mechanism under which the State Council reports to the NPC Standing Committee on the rectification of pronounced problems discovered in auditing, we will hear and deliberate the State Council's report on its correction of such problems and link efforts to oversee the correction of problems with efforts to inspect and oversee the budgets and final accounts of the State Council and its departments. We will conduct surveys on the implementation of the Standing Committee's decisions on strengthening oversight over economic work and intensify inspection of and oversight over the central government budgets and put into effect direct all reform measures aimed at strengthening the NPC's inspection and oversight. Fourth, we will strengthen oversight aimed at promoting economic and social development. To speed up the formation of systems and mechanisms for guiding the new normal in economic development and provide impetus to supply-side structural reform, we will hear and deliberate reports from the State Council on the implementation of the 2015 Plan for National Economic and Social Development, on the progress achieved in deepening reform of the system of transfer payments, on the state-owned assets management and their management system reform, and on scientific innovation in agriculture and forestry. We will carry out research on establishing a comprehensive government financial reporting system. We will also hear the reports on environmental conditions and the fulfillment of environmental protection targets in 2015. We will also carry out research on the formation of supporting rules and regulations for the enforcement of the law on regional ethnic autonomy and on issues concerning developing community-level self-governance organizations. To ensure impartial administration of justice and enhance judicial credibility, we will exercise oversight under the topics of promoting judicial impartiality through greater judicial openness and safeguarding judicial impartiality through enhanced oversight over investigation, and hear the reports of Supreme People's Court and Procuratorate. Third, giving full play to the principal role of NPC deputies and doing more to help them better maintain contact with the people. We will thoroughly implement the system whereby we maintain direct contact with NPC deputies, solicit and give expression to by multiple means their comments and suggestions. We will improve our efforts to brief deputies on the Standing Committee's important initiatives and solicit their opinions. We will establish permanent mechanisms allowing deputies to observe Standing Committee meetings, participate in inspections, and join the activities of special committees and working committees, making sure that they have at least one opportunity to sitting on a Standing Committee meeting. In addition, we establish a mechanism under which solicit opinions of deputies and people from all sectors before deliberating the National Economic and Social Development Plan and government budgets. We will also strengthen their ties with deputies and open up more channels for deputies to learn about state affairs. We will formulate guidelines on improving the system by which NPC deputies maintain contact with the people, enhance working and online platforms to facilitate contact between deputies and the public. We will establish a sound mechanism for relevant government departments to handle and give feedback on the comments and requests from the public that have been referred by deputies, and establish broader channels for the expression of social conditions and public sentiment, so as to give full play to the role that deputies play as a bridge. We will improve mechanisms for examining deputies' proposals and handling their suggestions, to ensure that the process of examining becomes a process whereby state bodies maintain close contact with deputies and improve their work. We will ensure NPC deputies play a bigger role in the drafting and revision of laws, and earnestly study and draw upon their comments and suggestions. We will urge and coordinate the efforts of relevant departments to handle deputy suggestions, helping them to improve their work through the handling of key suggestions. We will also enhance the political integrity and conduct of deputies and support electoral bodies in strengthening their law-based supervision, to ensure that deputies cherish the power granted to them by the people, carry out their duties in strict accordance with the law, observe the Constitution and other laws in an exemplary manner, and take the initiative in upholding common moral values. Fourth, making further progress in our work on foreign relations, information and publicity, and theoretical research while strengthening self-improvement. In accordance with the overall principles and plans of the CPC Central Committee for the country's diplomatic work, we will strengthen the planning and management of NPC's foreign relations work, giving priorities to developing contact with the parliaments of major countries, Chinese neighbors, and other developing countries. We will expand the scope of the exchanges with foreign parliaments and explore more diverse ways of conducting exchanges. In addition to the top-level exchanges, we will also use exchanges at various other levels, such as those conducted by NPC special committees, friendship groups, and local people's congresses. We will also make sure that we will enhance China's international influence and its weight in international discourse, but comply with and serve the Belt and Road Initiative. We will improve the NPC's information and publicity work by channeling great energy into publicizing the system of people's congresses, strengthening publicity and explanation of the NPC's work regarding legislation, oversight, decision-making, and election, and intensifying activities to illustrate how exemplary NPC deputies perform their duties. We will explore new ways of carrying out the NPC's publicity work, giving full expression to the functions of both traditional and emerging media to improve the effectiveness of publicity initiatives. We will advance the NPC's theoretical work, increasing efforts to study the new theories and practices as to upholding and improving the system of people's congresses and fully advancing the law-based governance of China developed by the CPC Central Committee headed by General Secretary Xi Jinping. We will enhance the development of think tanks for the NPC's theoretical research and study the features and laws of the NPC's work to help provide theoretical and intellectual support for the sound performance of NPC under new circumstances. We will maintain close ties with and provide guidance for local people's congresses. We will urge local people's congresses to implement the Central Committee's guidelines on strengthening the work and development of people's congresses at county and township levels. We will maintain close contact and improve coordination with local people's congresses and strengthen guidance over their work to maximize the efficiency. We will hold a national forum on local legislation, provide training on the revised legislation law, and guide local people's congresses in their legislative work. We will ensure that a good job is done in the elections of new people's congresses at county and township levels. Adhering to party's leadership, we will promote democracy, follow procedures according to law, and strengthen guidance and monitoring of the election work in order to ensure that elections are held honestly and election results meet people's expectations. We will further strengthen the self-improvement of the Standing Committee, conscientiously uphold the party's leadership, and ensure that political discipline and rules are strictly observed. We will raise our awareness of the need to uphold political integrity, keep in mind the bigger picture, follow the CPC as the core leadership, and act in accordance with the CPC Central Committee policy as we perform our duties. In addition, we establish a permanent, effective mechanism for practicing the 3 stricts and 3 honests, and make efforts to improve our work style, foster integrity, and create a healthy political environment. Fellow deputies, the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation beckons us on the horizon. And the great mission of finishing building a moderately prosperous society is inspiring us to press forward. Rallying even closer around the CPC Central Committee, headed by General Secretary Xi Jinping, let us set our sights on the future. Let's keep our feet firmly on the ground. And let's forge ahead with confidence and determination so as to ensure that China's economic and social development gets off to a good start in the 13th five-year plan period, and that we clinch success in the decisive push to finish building a moderately prosperous society, and the Chinese dream of rejuvenation of the Chinese nation can be fulfilled.